Thank you for coming here this morning to learn about wildlife and to share with us our enthusiasm for wildlife. The Connect Envirothon is a volunteer organization that's run by a steering committee. There's a lot of different people that are on it. I've been on it since 1991. Fortunate to be involved in it. It's a great thing. It's a great educational program. And then there's the whole host of other people. So you look up the Connect Envirothon website and you'll see all the different folks. I want to start out the morning by having the advisors of the teams stand up for me. And the reason I would like, and I don't want to embarrass you, I just want to, these are the advisors. The advisors, thank you so much for bringing the students here today. Thank you. And every year I say thank you. They're our local heroes, all right? I remember when I was in high school and I could identify all the good teachers. The teachers that were, there's good teachers and there's great teachers. And you guys, thank you. You're great teachers. Thank you for coming. And then the students that are here, thank you guys, because you are definitely, look, there's 3 million people in Connecticut, and you guys are here learning about wildlife, as passionate and enthusiastic about it as everybody in this room cares about it. There's 2 alumni here from the Envirothon that I just want to identify. Paul Benjunis is an outreach biologist with DEEP. He was on Coggin-Chog team back in the day, and he's here. And then Brian Sicardi, also alum right there. He's an alum with you guys. Just graduated from University of Massachusetts. And okay, yep, thank you. And he was from Housatonic Ag Science. Okay, and then I want to thank Jean. Where's Jean McLaughlin? Jean, she's high. Jean, thank you for providing the food. All right. She works hard at this, and then the Friends of Sessions Woods helped pay for that, and also the Master Naturalists, which I'll introduce, also funded some of the food. So we have 2 funding sources. So thank you, thank you. We have I invited a unique group of folks to our training. We used to have 120 students in this room, and we had like packed like sardines. And I said we're gonna increase the opportunity. So we have two parts of the education system: the early education, right? You guys are in high school, and we have ladder education because we always learn. So the Master Naturalist program, you guys raise your hands. They're here to learn about wildlife as well, and continuing their knowledge and their enthusiasm, and then to carry forth the messages that hopefully we'll get today. So thank you guys for attending as well. Yep. Okay. All right. So we got to start. We're going to kick off the whole thing at 4:45 for the programming. So I want to go over for you the agenda. So we used to do 5 concurrent sessions, 3 times repeated, and we used to have bird banding. I'm going to do bird banding every other year because our low numbers of, we ask a lot of our volunteers, and I want to make sure that we have this maximum amount of students per instructor. And so this year I have only the 1 hour of concurrent sessions. So we'll have an hour in here. Then we break up, and everybody signed up the sheets. When you came in, we split up between 5 programs. It'll be in this room. We'll be practicing wildlife, protecting wildlife and wildlife laws. That you'll hear from 2 conservation officers. Different way of protecting and enjoying wildlife is being a protector of wildlife. So you'll hear from them. Betsy and Christine from Christine Critters, they'll be in the room 2, and you're going to hear from them today in this full room in this session. But you also, they're going to get into even more detail about the birds in room 2, and then so we also have a Master Wildlife Conservationist program that's been going on for many, many years. So you guys have cousins, master wildlife conservationists. You guys are master naturalists. And there's also a master woodlands program, which is amazing. It shows the enthusiasm for nature and for conservation. So two of our master wildlife conservationists, Peggy Leroux and Art Potwin, is going to be doing the Connecticut fur bearers and pelts identification. And then we had Ed Smith, who's a former educator and Envirothon advisor as well. He's got his own personal collection of skulls. He's going to do identification. Room 4 got switched to the foyer, to the hallway, because the foyer is a little dark today with the clouds. And then we're going to have a necropsy, which is a collecting biological data from a bobcat. And I know everybody wants to go to that, but we can't. We have to have. We're splitting up into 5s. So I'm sorry, but next year I might. It's all at the mercy of who helps us, and we have Samantha Lewis, who was a seasonal employee that worked with the fur bearers, and she's going to do a full necropsy on a bobcat outside. So how we collect data from them. Used to be a rare thing to have a roadkill. Now it's like 30 a year or more. She'll tell you all about it. And we want to collect the data from them because we want to learn where, the distribution, how healthy they are, all the different morphologies. Okay, and then in this room at the between 11 and 10, we're going to do wildlife myths, and everybody's going to be here for that. Wildlife myths, what are they? Things that we want to dispel falsehoods, right? What we think, but what is the truth? Kind of like myth, it's Mythbusters, okay? There used to be a show like that. What was it called? I forgot. Was it Mythbusters? Okay, there you go. So, yeah, we're copying that name. They're not on anymore, but we're going to do it for wildlife. And then, everybody has the quiz. So it wasn't easy to put this quiz together. So I put numbers on all the different things in the building. And Tristan, raise your hand. He helped me. He's a seasonal employee with us. He helped me do it. And so please take it serious. We're going to go over it. It's 40. You're not going to get graded. And you could use, in this quiz, you can use whatever you want. Whatever tools you got. Pocket, computer, supercomputer, call your friend, phone a friend, 50-50. I don't care what you do. You guys can do the quiz however you want. It's about learning. And when you come to the Envirothon event, the test, they're going to sequester all your electronic equipment. So you're going to have to use the skin-covered computer for that day, okay? You know what that is, the brain. Okay, and you could use 5 people to do that, which I wish I could take a test with 5 people. You guys have a big advantage. Imagine taking a test with 4 people helping you. So you guys should be really acing those things. Come on. No, but if you pay attention and you learn stuff, it's all about learning. It's all about the experience. So in May, you guys get to do teams of 5. Are going to take the. Oh, and you know what, Joanne? Could you give me my wife Joanne back there, that shield? I need that right there. Yeah. So I usually don't get to see Ginny Potson, who's our executive director, couldn't make it today. She had a knee surgery, so this is the shield that from 2006. Winners of the Envirothon, state champions. We go back to 1991, so there'd be a lot more plaques. But this one, I'd like to. We're going to have it. So is Lori Doss here? Yeah. Lori, we're going to pass this along to Lori Doss's team. Was the champion last year for 2024. Round of applause from Marvelwood, and this is so you get to keep this for a year. I'm sorry, it's like only a few months because, unless your team wins again, you get to keep it for another year. But thank you, and if you bring it to the competition, that'd be great. Thank you, Lori. All right. Okay. All right. So we're gonna. All right, we're on time. So here's the the thought behind this presentation. Okay. Christine critters, they are heroes of. All right, wait, let me preface. Humans are the only animal that I'm aware of, and make me aware of if there's any other ones that are organism that actually cares about other animals, other species, and not just for their own good. In other words, like there's intraspecific competition, meaning within a species there's competition for resources. There's interspecific, meaning different animals are competing for resources, different genuses. But humans care about wildlife. We actually care about it. We can either destroy it or help it, at the bottom line. Now, and I always remind people of that we have the capacity to, we think about other animals. A beaver came over here and flooded the back field over here. They're like, I don't care. Sessions was not going to have the Envirothon program tomorrow. They're not going to care. Now, with that said, we have to couch that with like, okay, well, this building wasn't here when the beavers were here. We can go round and round and round. But at the end of the day, we can care. So, Christine Critters, you guys care about birds of prey. They rescue and help animals, and it's. Thank you.
Absolutely, yes. So I'll just do a quick introduction. And so my name's Christine, and I'm here with my mom, Betsy. And we've been working with Peter with Envirothon for, oh my goodness, I think this is our 8th year coming. And what Christine's Critters stands for is wildlife rehabilitation. And so Christine's Critters started in 2015 when I graduated from high school. I obtained the U.S. Fish and Wildlife permits to both rehabilitate and also display migratory birds. And the purpose was to rescue them and try to offset our human impact that we are, imposing on our wildlife here in Connecticut. And so at first I thought it would be like a fun summer, like hobby to do when you're home from college. But it slowly turned into a full-time endeavor where we take in over 100 to 150 patients each year. They range from owls to hawks to falcons, and all of them are special. Each one of them has their own story of how they came in. So this is a beautiful barred owl that got hit by a car, kind of an all too common occurrence here in Connecticut. Connecticut's very intersected with roads. We're also very dense as a population. So as a result, one of the symptoms is car strikes. But as rehabilitators, our job is to offset and try to make this bird as if it was never hit by a car. And so we got this bird to the vet, and he had a fractured ulna bone. And so I went to college to become a licensed veterinary technician. And so right now I work hand in hand with licensed veterinarians to help treat and rehab and try to release birds back to the wild. And like Peter was saying, most of the birds that we get in are human-caused injuries. Most of them are accidental, so hit by cars or flying into windows. But we also do have our fair share of purposeful injuries of birds that are purposely being shot. So this is actually a red-tailed hawk with an arrow through her. And the reason I share this case is because as rehabbers, right, we don't discriminate. We will take care of whatever bird comes to us as, licensed rehabbers. So this bird was actually in the parking lot to our veterinarian when we quickly snapped this photo. And pending all the gory pictures of surgery and removal, this bird actually did make a full recovery after having an arrow through her body. She was on antibiotics, pain medication, and again, she received that life-saving surgery from our veterinarian who's here releasing that bird back to the wild. So again, it's very rewarding to be a rehabilitator, and today we're here with some non-releasable educational birds to supplement what we're going to be talking about with some of our cavity nesting birds. So all of the birds that are with us today are non-releasable. So they have an injury that prevents them from going back to the wild. We wish they could, but unfortunately there are birds that come in with injuries that are far too complicated or complex to fix for release. This bird was just a miracle, and we're just so thankful that she was able to return to the skies. And in the very first picture, I just realized I didn't share that story. This was a beautiful bald eagle that came in from Middlebury, Connecticut last year. She was hit by a car on Interstate 84. She had head trauma, but miraculously didn't have a single fracture of any single bone. So this bird actually made a full recovery and was banded by our eagle biologist at the state, Brian Hess, and she was released at Chippewa Dam, the Bald Eagle Observatory. So we're crossing our fingers that she's doing well out there. But she was a feisty bird, and as you could see, she wasn't feeling too good there because I'm not wearing any gloves or any kind of protective equipment. She was not feeling too good there. But I'm excited to be here and be talking with you, Pete, and thank you for having us for,
And also, what Christine didn't say, she's also a falconer, which is a licensed falconer that hunts with the bird.
That's sort of how I started off. Yeah, everyone always asks, like, how'd you get into Christine's Critters? Why'd you start Christine's Critters? And it's because at 16 years old, I became a falconer and started hunting with a red-tailed hawk. So I quit lacrosse and joined the falconry team. And I just enjoyed it so much that I wanted to give back. And so the age limit for being a rehabilitator is 18. So I waited 2 years, flew my bird for 2 years, and then my mom helped me, start Christine's Critters and run it through college, because trying to run a full-time nonprofit through college without help is definitely difficult. And when you have living creatures, you need someone that's there. So my mom Betsy's here, and she'll be showing you some of the birds as well.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm a habitat biologist, habitat program biologist. So with Deep, and it's not as charismatic as what Christine's going to show you. So I combined so in my world of wildlife, there's what they call charismatic megafauna, charismatic. Christine and Betsy get to work with charismatic megafauna. Who doesn't love to see a bald eagle, to hold a peregrine falcon on your arm, really, to share? I know you guys have to deal with their trauma, fixing them, but at the end of the day, they're beautiful, right? Habitat, yawn, drab, there's 2,300 plants are in Connecticut, and there's 1,800 native ones. Well, who cares? Well, yeah, I care. We try to create good habitat. And in my work right now in this talk is to blend, where do these critters live? What is the future of these critters, given what's how land changes? If you didn't know, 70% of Connecticut is privately owned, 70%. There's 3 million acres. All of us, either your parents, your friends, your relatives, own that land, okay? What happens to that land is going to depend on the opinions, attitudes, and understanding of those that own it. You can't begrudge anybody that has a piece of land that want to put a house on it or want to do things on it, right? Or build a building or whatever. But there's also the conservation side. And we have lots of folks that are thinking about that. And so just keep that in mind. And as a biologist, I look at trends, and it's not a political thing. We're going to talk about what is happening. There's a thing called limiting factor: food, water, shelter, cover, space, and the arrangement. Okay, and the arrangement. When I'm going to ask, and this is the first time we're doing this, so we're blending these programs. And Christine, thank you, Betsy, for indulging with this opportunity. And when we're going to start out with Kestrel, which is the smallest falcon in Connecticut, and it's had an interesting history by habitat. We used to have 1,200 dairy farms in Connecticut. Now we have 150 dairy farms. So the habitat in Connecticut is very different, because the landowners that had the 1,200 dairy farms decided either to move the dairy farms west, or they decided, hey, cash in and let's make, or pass it on to their heirs, split it up. So that's the reality. Now there's 150. That's just one trend. So what I'd like to do for you, and before you show us the Kestrel, there's a couple pictures there. I'm going to go through some habitat, if this will let me here. All right, where are we? What's that say over there? What's that little? She locked up. Okay, perfect. Okay, what are the limiting factors for kestrels? So one is habitat loss, and the second is competition for nesting cavities. This 6 pieces of wood with a hole in it represents the approximate dimensions that a kestrel would nest in. There are many different little, you might find online, and there's modifications to this type of design, but at the end of the day, 6 pieces of wood with a hole in it, put on a post in a field environment that's large, agriculturally oriented properties, you could get a kestrel. And I just talked to Art Gringert yesterday to get an update, and there's 3 people that I know, Art Gringert and this guy Tom Sayre does the east side of the state, and Art does this side, and he encourages putting up boxes, and you'll see some pictures of it. And they said that this year, 2024, 185 approximate fledglings on the west side from boxes, and then 155 in the east. Now that's human intervention. They engage landowners or on state land and put boxes up. The limiting factor is a hole in a tree. Now, you know that we don't want to make our homes safe and places safe, so we tend to cut them down, which is fine for hazards, but we also want to consider when the pileated woodpecker excavates a large hole in a tree and they use it for a nest, the next year it's abandoned, that hole might be for a raptor. Depending on where that hole is, could make a difference whether or not the kestrels nest in it. And there's a big mystery about what is the real formula and where's the right spot to put them, okay? So I'm going to share with you some examples. If we take out the bird, I think all the attention will go to the bird. So we're going to wait a little bit. Is that okay? We'll just wait a couple. I want to cover the non-megacharismatic first, the non-megacharismatic. Then we're going to do the charismatic, okay?
And this is so important. Like, we rely on the preservation of land to have a place to release the birds back to the wild.
So these are some of the limiting factors. So kestrels, every animal has evolved. So animals do not randomly occur in the environment, first off. They don't randomly occur. It doesn't matter what animal you see with your eyes, it's doing something. It's looking for food, looking for shelter. It might be resting, it might be digesting its food, it might be mating, it might be courting, it might be chasing for something for food. It's always doing something. They usually aren't like reading the latest novel, okay? But they do interpret. You can interpret some of their behavior as playful, and we've done. People do that like with river otter. But at the end of the day, it's our interpretation. But at the end of the day, most animals are doing something: food, water, shelter, cover, space. That in dying trees I just mentioned is a limiting factor. And then, you see this last one down here, invasives, European starlings. And I'll share with you a story about them. They were released in New York, in a park in New York during a Shakespearean play because they make an interesting call. Historically, we had about 9% natural grasslands in Connecticut, natural, okay? Now we're down to 2%. And that's not even fair to talk about that because it's the quality of it as well. You can't really, it's 2%, but how big, what's the patch size? You need some significant patch sizes of grasslands to make good kestrel habitat. So what I did for you is I'm going to share this example with you. It's all at your fingertips. You could today, Google Yukon Clear. It's a Center for Land Use Education, and you could look at your town and you could say, 30 years ago, what did my town look like? And then what's it look like in 2015? So there's 10 years off on that, but. So this is South Windsor, and I'm not picking on South Windsor. There's 169 towns, so I picked one. Okay, here's in 1985, there used to be 4,990 acres of ag field. In 2015, there's 3,109 acres. What does that show? Now, it's reality. There's 1,800 less acres. Well, guess what? Kestrels use agricultural areas. So it's obvious that it's not going to get any better for kestrels. Now, we're looking at trends. It's not about it's what's going on. It's reality. So it's all privately owned, and this is a trend. So when we look at wildlife, we think about what is the population of that animal increasing, decreasing, or steady. For the kestrel, it's going to decline. It's going to hold on, but it's going to decline for a variety of reasons. One is habitat. We're not going to have the big farms, and we're not going to have the areas that we used to have. It is what it is. A lot of it gets converted. That's reality. Okay? And then turf grass. We added 904 acres of turf grass in that town in 30 years. 1,000 acres almost. And then they lost 1,000 acres of forest. And they developed 1,700 acres. Developed means, houses and concrete. Each year, we create 382,000 acres of lawns in North America. It's reality. It's not, again, don't tell folks Pete's anti-lawn or anything like that. I'm just stating what happens, okay? We have to face, it's reality. We can buy land and protect it, or we can not let it go to different types, but it's our choice, or the landowner. So we know if we could have the lights in the back, this bank closed real quick, somebody, so I can see that. Yeah. If everybody knows succession, farms are hayed or mowed, burned, or inundated, it stays grass. If you let this revert, not mowed for years and years, it'll turn to brush, and before you know it, it'll turn to trees. Every acre in Connecticut, unless it's inundated with water, salt inundated by the ocean, flooded by a beaver, mowed, burned, it will become a forest. It's where we live here, so the way the environment goes. So a lot of our fields that we have are really managed areas that we choose to manage. So a lot of the land that kestrels enjoy actually are artificially created through people's actions, right? Those natural grasslands with the wildfires that used to happen, Native Americans burning the woods and all those marshes down by the shore and all that, a lot of those are gone. So just remember that habitat's the place that the animal provides its basic requirements. It's the address of the animal, the address. So food, water, shelter, cover, space, and the arrangement. And there's layers to the vegetation. And I always tell people that you need to have these soft edges, because kestrels will hunt around here as well along the edges, power line rights of ways. But there's a lot of diversity between the forest and the fields, not just the fields. Okay, bobolink is probably a good example of a cohabitant of the grassland habitat. They both use the grassland habitat. Kestrels are not big bird killers. They hunt mostly for small mammals, and insects actually. And you'll learn more about that from Christine, I'm sure, in the next lecture. But they love to the grassland environment to hunt for the meadow mice, the insects, occasionally a bird. Bobolinks need 5 or more acres of grassland to make their minimum habitat requirement. Once the patch gets smaller than that, it's unlikely they're going to live there. Kestrels need hundreds of acres in patches, 50 or more acres in patches. And it could be within a large area, but not one locally. Not all in one spot necessarily. And meadowlarks are also. So anytime you see a field, you know that fields are they're kind of like the minority of that area. They have to be managed and maintained. And if you go on state land, you'll notice that we are trying to create more and more of these natural meadows to have diversity in it, okay? This is a real busy slide. I don't want to bore you with it. Just pay attention to that. Of all the things that affect how many animals live from season to season, the average number of animals that live from season to season in an area, all of these factors are very difficult to control, these right here. This right here, habitat, quality and quantity. We can directly affect the quality and quantity of habitat with the decisions that we make, okay? So we could create more really good fields for the kestrels, or we could put up boxes for them. We're improving the quality by adding nesting cavities. So we have so whenever somebody asks you, what can I do for wildlife? You can make a better habitat, whether it's for like in your backyard for a monarch butterfly, or whether you are a manager of a big farm, or you own a big farm, or your family owns a farm, or you work for a land trust, or you volunteer for a land trust, or volunteer for landowners that are managing big properties. You can steer those properties towards better quality if you want to. So that's the number one way to improve carrying capacity, is by improving the quality and quantity of habitat. Okay. Here is a habitat. This is Topsmead State Forest. The state forest, the foresters will let us manage the grasslands. If there's a forest and there's grasslands, they call the wildlife biologists up and they say, like say we acquire a piece of land and it's a state forest, part of the state forest, there's fields. They'll ask us, hey, you guys want to manage them? If you don't want to manage them, they're going to go to forest. So they're happy. Foresters are happy. Fields can turn to forest. But we no, let's manage them. We're going to try to manage them. So in this case, this is right up the road, up in off of 118. Here's 118. All these fields are agricultural fields, and we have what they call agricultural agreement with a farmer. The farmer hays not before July 15th. So he lets the fields stay hay till July 15th, and then he starts to hay them. And that's a compromise, because we would like to let it stay hay through the summer and into the fall, but to get a hay crop, we have to allow that July 15th first cut. But we also have fields in Connecticut in deep that we don't allow any cutting. We only cut half of it every year, in the winter. So we allow it to stay. So keep that in mind. I'm going to share with that. So on this property, it's a kestrel property and the bobolink. So if you want to see bobolinks, we had the Envirothon there years ago. Karen, where's Karen? You remember when we had it up? What year was that? 2005 maybe? I got this shirt with a bobolink on it. The Envirothon, we have a shirt every year and I've got like a stack of them about this high. The one with the yellow, with the bobolink, I think it was 2005. I don't know, maybe later. But anyway, over here, here's the farm. Here's all this agricultural. This area here where it's a destination area for weddings and things. They do mow this heavily here, but then the rest of this is mowed for benefits of the kestrels and the bobolinks. There's a kestrel box, I believe, right about here, that Art Ringer approached me and said they had it on a tree. He had it on a tree, and he said, if you guys can help us, we'll put it more out in the field. And after they did that, kestrels were successful. And I helped, here, I'll show you the photos. They were successful until the starlings knocked out a few years worth of populations. The starling goes into the box. If you doubt this, just tag along anybody who does nest box managing, and you'll see that they're very aggressive, and they'll knock them out. They'll knock them out of the box. If what Art does is he goes around looking at the boxes, and then if starlings do take them over, he ousts them. And all wildlife are protected by law except European starlings and sparrows, house sparrows, because they're a nuisance and they compete with cavities, and they're not. So you can legally oust them from the nest. Now, if other bird took over, like a flicker, no, you can't oust them because they're protected by law. But if it's a sparrow, house sparrow, or a starling, they can be booted out. So that's a good thing. But anyway, that they did cause the kestrels not to nest there a few years. Here's a flicker. They oust even flickers out of their cavities. Very aggressive bird. Competitive exclusion. They were released in Central Park. Okay, enough about them. Now let's look at this habitat. Whoops. And then we also, like I told you, we seed other areas. That's a 14-acre field. We seed over areas to make good habitat. We help also bumblebees. We help create habitat, ecotones. We create plenty of different habitats using the planting and seeding. This is up at Robin Swamp. By the way, thank you Housatonic River Ag for Housatonic Ag School for helping me up there. By the way, thank you. And we add milkweeds to these properties. And we add woodcock habitat along the edges. We control the invasives on the properties. We control them. We plant. This was the 1,000,000 seed plant that happened at Suffield. I had 58 volunteers help me plant over 1,000,000 seeds one beautiful June day. And that was like one of my highlights that of my career. I enjoyed that really a lot. We did plant by number. So this is just showing you that we're creating habitat. Suffield is a 120-acre field, state-owned, and also a neat area where kestrels hunt. There's a kestrel box on the Massachusetts side that's been successful up there. All right, so I'm going to, now we can show the bird. Do we have the lights? All right, Christine. Now for the moment of the megafauna.
They're sort of the spokesperson people for the habitat, if you think about it. Like we find that when people meet the birds, we can start discussing things like you're talking about where preserving of the habitat is all more important. I'm hoping this little guy behaves for us today. He can be always a little funny, but his name is Queso. And anyone want to take a guess? Is he a male or female? Yeah, he's a male kestrel, and we've had him now for several years. He came to us from Danbury, Connecticut, and he came in one winter day acting incredibly friendly to people as well as was starving. And so we don't know exactly what happened to him, but what our vet and I agree on is that he is incredibly habituated and imprinted to people. And so him and I were best buddies. He and I and his head have a nest together back at home. Every day I hand feed him, and then about 5 minutes later he'll try to hand me the food back. But we don't often at Christine's Critters get too many kestrels into rehabilitation, and I think that's because, like Peter was saying, their population is overall in decline. And so Queso has taught so many people about the importance of preserving not only habitat, but also limiting pesticide usage, because these guys like to eat a lot of insects, especially when they first fledge the nest. That you figure the babies, they fledge right as the cicadas and the katydids are coming out. And so there is a plethora of food for the young kestrels. And as they're eating those insects, they can be exposed to all different kinds of pesticides that we're maybe putting on our properties to try to get rid of, say, ticks or whatever like that. And so we do feel that kestrels and other birds of prey that eat more insects or birds have a higher heightened risk of that exposure. And here in Connecticut, like I said, we don't often get them into rehab, so it's pretty rare that we will see one come through our doors. We actually haven't had one come in yet this year. Our most common species would be something like a Cooper's hawk, who we don't have one with us today, but Cooper's hawks are the forest or the woodland birds. So we were looking at South Windsor and seeing how much forest has been taken away or whatever, but Cooper's hawks are very adaptive and they tend to eat a lot of songbirds. And so Cooper's hawks have been noted to eat kestrels in the wild as they've made a comeback. That's why we're on the sheet. And Queso here, he enjoys a diet of cockroaches, mice, and day-old chicks at our facility, and he is behaving pretty well today. Sometimes he can be very opinionated. That box that Peter's pointing out, for enrichment purposes, we do have one of these in his aviary, so that way he's able to have all the things that he would have in the wild. And every day he goes into his box and starts trilling to have, to come and attract his mate, which again is people. Another reason we know that he's an imprint is not only is he friendly to people, but he also can be a little bit feisty with other people. He's not the friendliest bird to all volunteers. He can attack your feet, or he'll go for your head, top of your head. And so he's a bird that oftentimes is one of the last birds if you're volunteering with Christine's critters to work with, because he can be very opinionated. Do you want to take out Miss Salsa? Yeah.
Salsa. Do you want to, I'm going to hand you
Yeah.
all these before I take her out.
Question for you. So do you think, you don't know why he came to you, but you think someone maybe had them and that they got implanted and then they released it, they found it?
Absolutely. It's all too common where even here in Connecticut, people will, through the goodness of their heart, they think they're doing the right thing. They'll try to raise wildlife themselves. And we work hand in hand with DEEP to, work with confiscation cases or just, kind of strange cases that we haven't really seen before, like that arrow hawk, like I was talking about. Our next kestrel that's coming out, we actually know exactly where she came from. She came from the Bronx. She was living in a parrot cage in someone's apartment. And so sometimes we get the story, other times it's like we kind of have to put pieces together. And based on his behavior, he cannot be released to the wild. He lands on people's heads is really what is the difference with him. But Salsa, so we have Queso and Salsa. We have lots of fun naming our birds. And
We used to have one named Chip, but he passed away from old age.
And Salsa is our female American kestrel, and what's awesome about American kestrels is they are dimorphic. So you can see the male looks completely different than the female. And in the raptor world, like with red-tailed hawks, even peregrine falcons, the only difference you're going to see is the female tends to be about a third to sometimes, our peregrine is twice the size of our male peregrine. In kestrels, it's the difference in their coloration. And Queso's being, of course, he never likes when Salsa comes out.
Because Salsa, now, believe it or not, these two cannot live together, both being imprints. Salsa's a complete bully, and she kind of beats him up. And so they actually can't share an aviary. So they can see each other from different aviaries and they'll talk, but they cannot live together.
I think, do you want to walk her
can
around
walk
while
her
I
around.
stay
I
up here
think
with Mr. Queso, because he's being a little much today. He can always be opinionated. He doesn't like outdoor programs where there's other birds flying around. We do all different kinds of educational programs. So I do, birthday parties. We do library programs. We do programs up at the Chapag Dam. We do programs here. Pretty much there's always a place for wildlife conservation education, even at a birthday party. We make it fun. We make it charismatic. And like Peter was saying, these species, their job is to be the spokesperson for not just them, but their habitat, what they represent, and, the risks of losing them to, potentially extirpation or becoming, extinct. And we have some other birds with us today that maybe even have been extirpated from this region before, but have been restored thanks to people like Peter and all of you guys who are here up this morning and just wanting to learn about wildlife, which is the most important thing, because we can spread that knowledge and hopefully inspire people to limit their use of pesticides. We come from Fairfield County, and along our area we have a lot of private property with very perfectly tailored yards. I'd love to see compare like a Fairfield County town to South Windsor, because there is just so much lawn, very, very little grassland. I'm very fortunate. We're near a 1,000-acre nature preserve, and there's a beautiful orchard that kestrels will nest in. But again, we very seldom get them in, which is a great thing, right? We don't want to be seeing anybody in rehab, because that usually means they've been hit by a car, maybe they flew into a window. But these two, they make great educational ambassadors, because one thing we really care about is animal welfare. It can be really difficult to train a wild bird to participate in educational programs. We have a 20-plus-year-old bald eagle who came from Burlington, Connecticut. She cannot do educational programs. She is 20 years old. She had lead poisoning, and she did not adapt to a positive association with the glove. We only bring birds that are confident, comfortable, and trained with positive reinforcement, just to promote the idea of not having every single wild raptor on glove, because some wild raptors want to just kind of hang out in an enclosure and educate from afar. Other wild raptors, they just want to be back out in the wild, and each one of them has their own personality. And our goal at Christine's Critters is to get them back out there. That's always the best day, is when they can go back to the wild. It's never a nice thing when we get a non-releasable bird in. Just the other day, we got a very, very beautiful young of the year. So he's a hatch year. He just hatched last year, red-tailed hawk. He was hit by a car, and he had an old eye injury. And birds of prey, the diurnal ones, if they have an eye injury, pretty much 9 times out of 10, they're non-releasable. So right off the bat, just on intake, I can tell, oh man, like this bird's probably gonna have to find a home with a nature center. And so that's what we're off to do, is try to find him a home within 6 months, because we are regulated by not just the state, but also the Fish and Wildlife, and most recently the United States Department of Agriculture. So these birds are heavily protected, and for a good reason, because they are in decline, and we need to do everything we can to try to preserve them, conserve them, and have them for generations to come. I don't know if he likes my hat today or something. I don't know. He's like looking at me all kind of angry, but I don't know if we have any questions, or if you have anything you'd like to add about.
If we could hold the questions, because we have 3 more birds to cover, and we're going to end at 10. But we'll take questions at the end, okay? If you don't mind, so we can get this. We got to get through 3 more birds. And I want to cover the habitat as well, the less charismatic part of it. So, yeah, thanks. So we're gonna, I'm gonna finish the slides. If we could have the lights in the back, I'm gonna finish the slides. That is the nest box at Topsmead. If you go there, this is Art Greengert that manages those boxes. And here's a successful banding. One year that. There were these 3 birds were fledged there, and of course we depend on the natural cavities as well. So you think the woodpeckers that are the primary excavators, they excavate cavities, and then the secondary users are kestrels and the birds of prey that use those cavities secondary. Outside here, there's a display of the different boxes you can build. If you're interested in it, this was built by a Eagle Scout project, and we have corresponding technical assistance sheets that go with that. Okay. All right. The next bird that we'd like to highlight is the northern saw-whet owl, and I want to share with you a little bit about the habitat for that animal. So the northern saw-whet owl is also a cavity nester, and if you look at the nesting in Connecticut, it happens more in the northwest corner of the state, but it winters here, So we'll get many saw-whet owls moving south, and then we'll have them moving north. And what they love to do is roost in evergreens. Okay, so evergreens, if you look at the entire state, if you flew over in a helicopter, you look down, about 10% of our environment is evergreen, okay? So it's the minority. Now, we have grasslands that are also even less than, there's less grasslands than evergreen habitat, but evergreen habitat is very minor, okay? It's just not as, not as prolifically found here, not abundantly found. So the saw-whet owl will nest in evergreens. So in the winter, as saw-whet owls migrate south and they move back north, they are roosting in evergreens. And you never know where you're going to find one. They like riverine floodplains, but they'll also show up in places that you would not believe. Like this slide right here, this is in North Haven on state land. And there, you can't see him, but there's a little owl right there in a red cedar. And we know that red cedars are what we call pioneer species. Red cedars come in to a field, and then as the field continues to evolve and succeed, oaks and hickories will overtop it, like you see there, and then they'll get shaded out and they fade out. So that's one type of evergreen that declines with forest succession. And we know that Connecticut, 1,200 dairy farms that were abandoned, a lot of those succeeded to forest. And there was a time there where there was lots of red cedars, now they're declining. So what did we do on this project? So there's a saw-whet owl that's sitting in the red cedar right there. And every year I try to do a hike through there, and I take, like we had 35 people last month. We walked through the area. We didn't find a saw-whet this year, but we have in the past. And that one was on one of our walks. It was only about 6 feet up into a red cedar. They hunt at night, catching mice. Then they hang the mice next to them, and then they feed on the mice during the day. And very, very interesting. It's the smallest owl found in Connecticut. Now, how do we help this owl? What do we do? Because they don't really nest as much in Connecticut, putting up cavities is probably not the answer. The limiting factor for them is the evergreen habitat, okay? So if you could create patches of evergreen, what we did in this case is we got a grant from the Natural Resource Conservation Service. You may have heard of that group. It's a federal organization that distributes farm bill funding to landowners. And they used to fund also on state lands. And we got a grant where what we did is we took heavy equipment and we daylighted all around the evergreens. We daylighted them with the drum chop mower and the chainsaw, and we allowed the existing evergreens to get more light to penetrate and thicken, okay? For those of you that want to dive deeper into it, I wrote a Connecticut Wildlife article, and I'll leave it up here. You guys can pick them up on that project. And it was one little micro habitat. You could go back 50 years. There was a professor, Noble Proctor, from Southern State University that used to take his students there 50 years ago to look at saw-whet owls and long-eared owls that were roosting there in the winter. I did it for 25, 30 years. I lost track of time now doing the same kind of thing, but I looked at the habitat. It was more about the habitat, the riverine habitat. And the saw-whet owl was like a highlight of that. And we had many years where we found saw-whets. And they were, but by enhancing the habitat and restoring the habitat, you can help that species find roosting areas. Of course, we know the woolly adelgid and the hemlock scale, this exotic disease, has killed off a lot of hemlocks. They like to roost in hemlocks as well. So we've lost quite a few percentages, maybe 2% or 3% of our hemlocks. So by replacing, trying to, and by the way, you can, all the evergreens from white pines to spruces, they're all very good to the cedars to create habitat. Anytime you cluster habitat together, the evergreens, not just one sitting there, you could just put one sitting there, but cluster them in big bunches, they are good habitat because it's winter cover, shelter, provides thermal cover. It provides predator avoidance, okay? Even the cardinals will roost in there, okay? Cardinals. Right now, everybody, you guys been hearing this call? You guys been hearing that? We'll get calls like, we have owls in our backyard. No, those are mourning doves. And it's like February and they're, now, mating behavior is pretty cold out there, but they're still mating. Why? Because they have the ability to nest early. They'll pick out the evergreens and they'll make their nest, and they exude a crop milk to their young. So they have a different way of feeding than other songbirds. Songbirds usually pick off bugs and bring them back to their young. Doves can feed on seeds, exude a crop milk to their young, so they can nest earlier. And evergreens provide that habitat. Now I'm just connecting that because if you do make habitat in your backyards and on your land trust land and wherever you can benefit that early nesting and also the roosting of the Saw-Whet owl. Now here's a video that I took. Hopefully it'll play. So my wife and I are walking on rails to trails in Southington, and I'm always a hawkeye for animals. I like to look, find, there's a bald eagle flying, or anyway. I look up on one day I saw a mourning dove with a stick in its mouth up on a wire, and I know we were going by this big patch of white pines. So I go, aha, evergreen habitat, stick in the mouth. It's March. They got to be nesting somewhere close. So I would always scan the pines, and sure enough, one day, this is like March, there she is sitting on a nest, on a stick nest, and they're there. Sometimes you go by them, you don't notice it, but evergreen habitat is very valuable. It's every third year the needles fall off, so it's really a deciduous tree with a 3-year delay. Okay, so it's deciduous, but it delays 3 years, so the needles are some of them are going to stay green for 3 years. So our Saw-Whet owl depends on evergreens for the winter. Just keep that in mind. Okay, we're almost ready for you guys to show the bird. I'm going to share with you before we see let's see. Yeah, let me do this first. And so you guys are future conservationists. I wish everyone in this room would do it for their life. You're going to do it for your life, whether you get paid for it as a career or not. Conservation is all around us. So I just want you to know that there's a skill that is kind of lacking out there. And if you guys, I'm doing a little recruitment here for scientifically guided skills, okay? I was fortunate as a young boy to be interested in taxidermy. And when I got to University of Connecticut, I did study skins. And I'm going to, everybody's kind of wants cutesy stuff today. They want to see everything online. They want to do like online dissection, and like we got away from the real stuff. Well, this bird right here in this box is a Saw-Whet owl. He's not doing too good. It was hit by a car in Torrington, 1985. There's a tag here. It says 1985, Torrington, Connecticut. I was working here. I was just out of college. I was working here as a season, not in this building, with the upper building. And when it came in, I go, oh, wow, and what we're going to do, we're going to look at it and bury it. So I made a mount out of it. I've used it for over 30 years for education. Now, Christine and Betsy are lucky to have the live version of this. So I don't have that around me, so I use...
You're lucky to have the mounts, though. That's
Okay, no, so the mounts are good. So the mounts are less charismatic, but when I worked at the Museum of Natural History, I did over 100 study skins of different animals. Study skins are prepared skins. They put them in. Now, what can we learn from this? somebody could take the DNA from this. I got the date, the time, the location. They could take DNA from it and determine what's the DNA on 1985. This bird was hit by a car in the winter, and it was an accident. The car, they hit it, and now we have the specimen. Up at UConn, they have a drawers full of different specimens. They could go and do a comparison. They could do a toxicology test on this. They could take samples and look at the lead in its, all the different pests, pesticides and things. So it's science. Now, nobody is going into it. Now, it's not charismatic, but it is important. So if any of you are interested, we need people to do that. Nobody does it anymore. Everybody's good at pinning bugs. They like pinning bugs because it's not, it's not that hard to do. But skinning an animal and then mounting it or making a study skin is, and all the animals that you see that are preserved in the building. So keep that in mind, that it's important to conserve using scientific methods. All right, now we're going to see the charismatic real animal, a little more shiny. Can we have the lights? Okay. And if I could hold it to 5 minutes so we can, yeah, it's okay. So everybody,
So this is
we can cover
Douglas,
the other two. Awesome.
and he's one of our northern saw-whet owls that we've had at Christine's Critters. And it's crazy that we're alongside this mount because saw-whet owls don't live very long, both in the wild and in captivity. Douglas is our second educational saw-whet owl. Our first one, his name was Higgins, and Higgins lived with us for, 7 years or 8 years. He came in as an adult. He was attacked by a cat. And that bird, Higgins, actually ended up developing cancer, sarcoma on his leg. And he needed surgery to have it removed. And unfortunately, due to the nature of the surgery, our veterinarian was not able to recover the bird, and the bird did pass under anesthesia. So Higgins was estimated to be 15 years old, and he again developed cancer in captivity. So I think it's amazing that these mounts are able to last decades because, again, our educational ambassadors are really not here for very long. So we work to educate as many people as possible while they're here and while they're with us. And if you're wondering what kind of vet sees these birds, it is our board certified avian veterinarian sees all of our educational birds. Once a year, we do a vet visit where they get blood work, they get their actual vaccines for West Nile because West Nile virus is very prevalent and little saw-whet owls are very susceptible. And again, like Peter was saying, they are habitat specialists. They really like pine forests. And this past year, we got in a bunch of saw-whet owls into rehabilitation. And we were able to recover one of them, and he was hit by a car. He stayed with us for a few weeks, and we actually got into contact with Larry Fisher, who is a master bird bander. And so he actually met up with us. He knew where a roost was, and he banded this little saw-whet owl. So that way we were able to know, like, if he ever were to come into rehab again or if someone were to see him. And this saw-whet owl, over a month later, was seen in a tree about 20 feet away, and he was hanging out with all his other new saw-whet owl friends. So they do like to roost, and they tend to stay like right in that area. So I'm very happy to hear, a month after that bird's doing well, because once we release that bird back to the wild, we never know what happens to them, right? As soon as you open that carrier, they could get hit by a car, they could get eaten by something else. So our job as rehabbers is to set them up for success, and it's always nice to hear back when one's doing well. Douglas was hit by a car, so he's not able to go back to the wild due to an injured wing, and so he's not able to fly. He kind of glides down to the ground, and more than likely, based on his size, Douglas might be a female, but our educational ambassadors, they are, again, they're named prior to like getting their final weight or anything. So it was a mistake, but the name kind of stuck, I think. So this is Douglas, and based on the size of her and the weight of her, usually you can estimate male versus female, and it's a funny mistake that was made at Christine's Critter. So. Yes, we do. Yes, we do. But I'm going to make sure to hold so that way Peter has plenty of time to discuss anything else about habitat of these guys, but the real main takeaway is that our pine forests here in Connecticut are important. They're few and far between. As you go up more north in United States, you're going to find more forests, and as you go into transition into Canada, you go to the boreal forests where it's just all beautiful pine trees, and these guys thrive in that habitat. They nest throughout the northern part of North America. Here in Connecticut, very, very few nesting pairs. We did receive one young northern saw-whet owl from North Granby, Connecticut years ago, but again, that was an anomaly, and it could have been a fledgling from Massachusetts. We're not quite sure, but they're very, very seldom seen nesting here. More often, we get an influx of them. It usually starts in like mid-November to Christmas time. We get all kinds of saw-whet owls in. And I just mentioned Christmas time, so it just reminded me, this was the species of owl that was in the Rockefeller Christmas tree just a few years ago when they cut down the tree and brought it to New York City. Somehow, some way, this little saw-whet owl decided, I'm gonna hunker down in this tree. And so he ended up being, you know, in the middle of New York City in this tree, and thank goodness he was rescued, transported to another facility, and made a full recovery and release. So I just think that story's so funny, and it made a great children's book. We do a lot of children's programs with books and stuff, and it's just the best story to do around the holidays. But Pete, I want to make sure we have plenty of time for the other species. So if you need a, yeah, perfect.
I just want to add one thing, while you're doing that, I think we've got to change the shift of people, not just to think about breeding, but think about the full annual life cycle of birds and restoring habitat for like migratory species like this that may not breed everywhere in Connecticut, but if we don't have that habitat, they won't exist.
Exactly, like they don't, I doubt they're breeding, say, in Weston, Connecticut, but we get them all from Weston, Connecticut in the wintertime, and I figure they come to our yards. A lot of people's homes have shrubbery, and that shrubbery attracts these guys. It's great nesting habitat. And so again, Higgins, our previous saw-whet owl, he was attacked by a cat. And so we do a lot of education about keeping cats indoors because cats are so bad for all of the species we're talking about. They kill billions of birds a year, and this little guy would stand no chance against a kitty cat.
All right, thank you. Okay, I love those little guys. They're if you see them in the wild, I'm telling you, and to search for them. So we were searching for them a few weeks ago at the traditional area, and we found a barred owl there. We found a barred owl, and everybody got to see a barred owl, which they're nice, they're big. And I don't think we have a barred owl today, but that's yeah. But I found out they'll prey upon saw-whets. They'll hors d'oeuvre them, you know, they call it, you know, which is pretty sad, but interspecific competition. Okay, all right, we're gonna switch gears. So this is all about habitat. Now you guys get why I had the mega charismatic fauna involved in this. You guys would not be as excited about the habitat as you would when you see, once you see one of these birds, it's so hard to not just get fired up and just inspire you. Okay, so the next bird, I'm actually going to have you, this one I'm going to do in reverse because I'm not going to talk about habitat as much about this one. It's more, this next bird that Christine's going to present to us has a very interesting background. So it's a cliff nester, cliffs. Its big issue was DDT. Big issue was DDT, accumulation in its body, and the trade, right? Unfortunately, the illegal trade. I actually invited a retired wildlife biologist. She couldn't make it today. She, unfortunately, but she sent me an article. So I remember back in my early career, I remember this story about this peregrine falcon in Connecticut, and so I called her. I said, "Can you remind me?" I remember there was a story about somebody stealing the eggs of a peregrine falcon in Connecticut. And so she sent me the article from the Hartford Courant. And here's how the story went. There was a conservation officer, which you're going to see here in 11 o'clock. He was with binoculars looking on the Connecticut River. He's down in Middletown. He's looking down the Connecticut River, and he was checking fishing licenses. Can't make this up. This is Unbelievable. How was he in that spot? While he's looking, he noticed that they went to where the peregrine falcon nest was, and guess what? They stole the egg. And they proceed to paddle away. He gets down there with backup, and hey, what are you doing? Anyway, long story short, and I'll show you the article. It's not fictitious. This is a real thing that happened. I think it was 2001. I think it happened. Anyway, I'll show you the article. It's a long article. It's in one of my slides. I can scroll down. I'll show it to you. They were college kids. I couldn't believe it. Really? So anyway, it went to court, and they had really no excuses. I guess the bottom line was there were 3 eggs in the nest. They put the egg back, because they rested them. They put the eggs back in the nest, and only 2 hatched. So they're not sure if the egg that was stolen didn't hatch or not hatch. But at the end of the day, 2 of the eggs did hatch and successfully fledge. But they tried to steal an egg. Now, a peregrine egg is worth $10,000 minimum, probably more. So there is a black market. So it happens. It's hard to believe. Like I found that one hard to believe, but it happens. So there is this illegal trade out there that most of us are not really aware of, but it happens. So keep that in mind. The habitat side, we are putting boxes up on bridges and travelers towers, and there's different ways to create this artificial shelf that they can nest in, and they'll kill pigeons, and they'll harvest. They're hunting, actively hunting. So there's a really neat bird. So I'm going to pull up the slide for that while we're going to see this charismatic megafauna. And by the way, falconers, which Christine is one, is why they came back. You might want to tell that story.
Absolutely. She's going to talk to us too. Hi. Hello. Hi, baby. I'm just waiting to see if she wants to go to the bathroom on our wee-wee pads before we go on the sheet. All of our birds are not potty trained, and birds poop quite often, so I think we're going to wait. All right, you're going to wait.
So if I could, I just have this slide. So if you notice here, it said, Christine used the term extirpated. Extirpated is different than extinct. Extinct means there's no more left, right? Extirpated means that they're not found in that region. So in 1995, they were extirpated from Connecticut and the eastern region. So it's not that long ago, 1975, that we would not see any flying around. They're not here. They were not a population, okay? And then they do still get exposed when they leave here to DDT, but they're in 1972 that was banned in the United States. And of course, there's the Migratory Bird Treaty Act of 1918 that you guys should know about that protects migratory birds, okay? Go ahead.
Oh, no, absolutely. And, just sort of piggybacking off of that, I always feel so fortunate to be able to share Equinox with the world. We are both in person, so we do in-person programs, we do virtual programs, and then we do also have a very strong presence on social media. So we educate about birds all over the world, which is so fun to be able to talk about these points in other countries. But we're coming up on Earth Day this year, and Earth Day came around in 1970, and it just so happens, if you look behind us, in 1972, DDT was banned in the United States. DDT was a chemical that we sprayed widespread throughout the United States, especially in the eastern part. And the problem is, whenever you're using a large amount of chemicals, there's somebody that's making money off of those chemicals. And so anytime legislation is being introduced to ban a chemical where someone is standing to lose a lot of money, there's a back and forth fight. And this is an example of a time in history where the good side won, the right side won, and despite the constant arguments in court in 1972, DDT was able to be banned here in the United States. It's not banned worldwide. That's a good thing to note, is it is still around. And the biggest problem with DDT is it worked its way into the food system, and with peregrine falcons, it caused a devastating impact to their population. We had 0 peregrine falcons here very, very quickly. And peregrine falcons, peregrine in Latin means wanderer. They're found all around the world. These birds are found on every single continent except Antarctica. So I always imagine one day visiting Australia and then somehow randomly seeing an Australian peregrine. That would just be a pretty cool moment. Or in Africa. You can pretty much travel anywhere and they're there. But peregrine falcons were not extirpated or extinct from all around the world. They were just locally extinct, which is the special word for extirpated, here in the Northeast. And so falconers, which are people who are trained to hunt birds of prey, at this time, they obviously had some peregrine falcons that were still in captivity that they were actively flying. And so they got permission from both the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and they worked hand in hand with a nonprofit organization called the Peregrine Fund. And what they did is they took their birds and they bred them in captivity, which was actually never successfully done before this. So the birds had never successfully been bred in captivity. This was just a last-ditch effort. Let's see if we can reproduce them, and it was successful. Problem is now, how do you take this baby chick and make them ready for the wild? And so there were all different methods employed. One method was having falconers fly them for a season or hunt with them for a season and then release them to the wild. There's a book called The Rites of Autumn, which is a falconer who actually followed his peregrine in his car on migration, on his first migration. I love that book. And then other ways that peregrine falcons were introduced here is through hacking. They had hacking boxes throughout New York and I believe in Connecticut. And what they did is they actually set little baby peregrines up on these elevated platforms and they would feed them. And that way the birds were able to naturally fledge, and it's as if they had parents, right? Because humans are providing that food. And in addition, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife actually granted depredation permits to kill great horned owls in the area that the peregrine falcons were being reintroduced. So there's always this balance, right? It seems like, oh my goodness, don't kill the owls, right? But great horned owls are very common birds and they're predators. And so we don't want to have all this great conservation work, all these chicks that had hatched out for the first time in captivity, be decimated by the local great horn population. So there was a very balanced conservation approach. And as a result, here today in Connecticut, we've got a wonderful population of great horned owls. They're doing great. And we also have a pretty stable population of peregrines. I don't know if you have the most recent count on, this past year, but
15, I heard 15.
which is fantastic. So 15 active nests. Definitely still on the shaky side, right? And so we definitely want to protect them from future dangers. And one thing that in their lifetime that I think they'll be facing is just the rampant use of pesticides, other different types of pesticides. Each year, different chemicals are approved by the EPA, and there's no real long-term wildlife safety studies done on them. And so it relies on conservationists to be the first sort of round of alarm, like if we're seeing something that's anomaly in the environment. And most recently, I have seen an article from both the Audubon as well as other environmental organizations talking about the use of pesticides and how it can be the next DDT, how it's working its way up the food web. But she's just fantastic. She has done so many educational programs with us. Her name's Equinox because they tend to migrate around the spring and as well as autumnal equinox. And then we have a male peregrine falcon named Solstice. So we have a lot of fun naming our birds, as you guys can tell. I think the best one's name is Salsa, though.
Thank you. And right there, that's a Charter Oak Bridge peregrine nest box. See it? It's a little, that's attached to a bridge. So, that another structure that you could put up in the right locations. The Travelers Towers used to have one there. I'm not sure about the population there. So that's there. And okay, so here's that article. Here's, I'm not going to. So this was in the article. This was in the Connecticut Wildlife article. You guys can look it up if you want to Google it about that. When they stole the eggs. So thank you, Christine. The next, so we only have 5 minutes for the next, we're gonna not do this animal justice, but One day I was walking through the woods and I hear, and I'm like, is there a horse around here? Anyway, it's a hooting eastern screech owl. When I was 8 years old, they were cutting a tree down outside my window at Southington, Connecticut. Can't make this up. And in that tree, I remember there was a lot of cavities. There were squirrels in there, and you know, I never noticed any owls, but I used to hear the, you know, that's not an owl, it's a mourning dove. And so I was intrigued about when they were cutting this dead limb off this tree. My neighbor was cutting this big, so I was on my bicycle and I was watching from a distance. Can't make this up. And so the guy cuts this big dead limb and it goes ba-boom on the ground. What rolls out of that piece of wood is an eastern screech owl. Can't make it up. And it's like wobbling around. Then it flies up on a branch. It stayed there on a tree next to the site for a long time. I witnessed it. I was 8 years old. And I'm like, this owl lived right next, like outside my bedroom. Had no clue it was there. So you guys can bring it out. Eastern screech owls. Oh, another time, Joanne, my wife, is testimony. We're driving around and I drove by the site and I go, did you see, it looked like an owl back there. No. We pull over. There were 5 eastern screech owls. Joanne, right there. All right, now I got 2 people to tell you this is real. There's 5 of them looking for the bugs around this light in Southington. I couldn't believe it. Picking off bugs around the light. Look at these guys. Cavity nester. It could be in your backyard. This box on the tree, protected from predators and squirrels, could make a home for that bird. So just keep that in mind. Very common bird, big mouser, but loves to eat bugs too. All right. Anyway, cool.
I have this picture that just shows their camouflage.
Yeah, cool.
So I just love to
So-
show it because of how well they blend in.
So, guys, we're almost at. We got like 5 minutes of questions. Sorry. So I'm going to be able to take. All right, you raise your hand quick. Go ahead.
When they're cutting down trees, they, meaning the state or whoever, and they notice maybe an owl nesting, is there a law? Do they have to follow a law to?
Okay, that's a great question.
Because I think about that.
So on state land, we're very careful about that. We even do bat monitoring to see if there's any bats in the area too. Not only, and if we try to do the harvesting or the hazard tree removals outside of nesting season. But if we did notice that, we wouldn't knock the tree down. Yeah, but on private land, it happens more than not, and you guys are probably.
It can be hard for the natural screech owl nests. They tend to be in dead trees, so unless the tree person physically climbs the tree and checks every hole, we find that screech owls, the cavity nesters, tend to be disturbed more often than, say, a red-tailed hawk nest, although red-tails still too good. So in a perfect world, yes, you're not supposed to cut it down, but I think, unfortunately, sometimes it does happen.
Yes, well, probably one more question. Go ahead.
You mentioned
Well,
about
no,
the
we can-
eagle on 84. I was wondering how that eagle, was able to be picked up and taken.
Thanks to our wonderful, so she asked how the eagle got from the side of the highway to Christine's critters. So thankfully the bird wasn't run over, and our state police actually stopped traffic and got the bird off the road. And then our wonderful wildlife conservation officers came with gloves and all their equipment, and they rescued the bird off the side of the road and then transported it to Christine's critters. Anytime a bird's on the highway, we have to use the police because, again, it's a safety issue for both us and other people. We don't want to cause an accident trying to rescue a bird. So,
Motorists going by called.
yes.
Lots of motorists call.
Yes. Yeah, so if you see something, call the DEP.
Two quick things. With the bald eagle, you have to have special permission to even touch it to rehab it, correct? In other words, because of the federal protected species?
So they are all protected, but there is a Good Samaritan law where, again, if you are, acting out of good conscience and you're getting that bird to a rehabilitator, I have people rescue all different kinds of birds. With eagles, it tends to be that I'm getting the call and I'm, sending either myself or a
I think she's
DEP
asking
officer.
to rehab them,
And-
and all birds, actually.
Yes, so.
No, actually, I knew there was a bald eagle in Kent, and no one could touch it. We had to get someone who had permission.
Oh.
So that was my question. But the other one is rodenticides. What are you seeing with the rodents and the impact?
Huge impacts, unfortunately. Coming from our very populated part of Connecticut, it's a all too common problem. We haven't done any formal studies as a small nonprofit, but larger institutions like Tufts University, their study from 2012 cited that 88% of their patients had SGRs in them, or second generation rodenticides. A place called Hope did an informal study where like 70 or 80 of their patients out of 100 had SGRs, and that was post-mortem. So all those patients had passed away and they just sent them for testing, and 80 of them had an exposure. So it's a huge concern. Right now at the state level, we are working to hopefully be the second state in the nation to ban it, followed by California.
We'll take one more question and we got to really move to the next session. But thank you.
Two little things. One of them is, why are these eggs worth $10,000? Did they try to hatch them? And then
Okay, the question was why are the peregrine eggs $10,000 or more? Yeah, it's to hatch them and then utilize them in the illegal pet trade.
do you ever, I know that two kestrels don't like each other, but do you ever let pairs of birds come and visit each other?
We have
Or try to,
We have two resident red tails that are bonded. They build a nest together. Our screech owls live together. The peregrines don't because they're bird eaters. If they can, yes.
Barns live together.
will they ever lay an egg?
Yes, they do. We're not allowed to reproduce birds of prey because we don't have a propagation license.
Do you have to destroy the eggs?
Yeah, usually what I do is I shake them and then they can incubate them, usually day one. Or I replace them with ceramic eggs. And that's, again, just to follow all of our permits.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Yep, let's get out of here. And